Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. My friends, hello, and welcome to another episode of Ending Physician Overwhelm. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. Here we are again, and once again, I find myself dragging my feet a little bit in coming before you today to talk, because if you are a human living in February of 2025, particularly in the United States, if you are a physician, if you are worried, anxious, concerned, overwhelmed, devastated, horrified by the state of the world right now, you are not alone. I hemmed and hawed about what can I focus on? What can I say? What can I possibly do? And I realized that despite all of the current challenges, us coming together, us being here in this space and in other safe community spaces is more important than ever. And so today, what I want to share with you is 6 things that I've identified that are a part of my women physician community, Unbound, which is enrolling its next cohort for Sunday, March 2nd, 2025. I want to highlight some of the key elements that the current participants have received, because I think that they are reflective of the things that we need so much at this time that I want to share them with you. And if you are a woman physician, if you are hearing me and you're listening to this episode in real time and you're thinking, I need these things, I want to invite you to come and join us. But even if that's not applicable, if you are not a woman in medicine, if you are listening to this at another time, I want you to focus on and think about these key elements, because I believe that each of them is really critical to taking care of ourselves during this time when, again, I think we are going to experience unprecedented turmoil and stress and division. So the first thing that I identified that I think is so crucial right now is community. Having a supportive community around you, having people that you can turn to, is frequently something that women physicians identify that they feel like they're missing. They may feel, because of our socialization, that they can't come together with other people and really share what's going on. If they have friends who are not physicians, they don't trust that those non-medical folks will understand the particular stressors that they're going through or the challenging thoughts in their head, such as, let's just say, maybe they had a stressful encounter with a patient, and the words that they want to express might sound really awful to someone who has not worked in medicine and dealt with the pressures and the emotions and the very real dilemmas that come up. Having community that you can come together and trust that you will be seen and heard and supported is essential. It is essential for our wiring as human beings. And you might say to yourself, well, I'm surrounded by humans all day. I talk to humans all day, every day. What are you talking about with community? I'm exhausted with people. It is not the same. Being surrounded by people, including your patients, your staff, that is not the same as being in community with people where you have folks that you trust, folks that share something in common with you, again, whether that's professional or personal. It is so essential, and it's only going to be more so moving forward. I wanted to share a story of something that one of our participants experienced, which is that she was, I'm going to say it, fake fired by her organization that she's worked for many years. She received a letter, an email actually, late in the afternoon that her credentialing had expired and she was terminated immediately and not able to come to work the next day. Because we have a very active and lively group chat, she shared that with us. She shared her feelings with the whole group. She shared the experience of having received this email and just being so caught off guard. Now, it turns out, you'll love this. It turns out that there was one person in HR who had somehow done this to a number of physicians. The physicians had not been contacted that they were overdue or about to be due to submit their credentialing, despite the nasty language in this email that said that they had been. They had not been. She had gone back through her emails. She had looked for letters. She had cleared her desk. She was looking everywhere for some evidence that she had missed something that had told her that she was due to update her credentialing. There was nothing. Now, this email that terminated her immediately said that she had been notified several times. She had not. And it all came down to one HR person who ultimately was fired, but 40 physicians were involved. Everybody take a deep breath. Imagine navigating that, which is sadly a very real kind of BS phenomenon that could happen to any of us, and not having a safe place to turn to. I think these kinds of experiences happen to physicians all the time, and it's a very real part of the siloing and the depression and the isolation that people feel that ultimately sometimes cost physicians their lives. Having a community is so important as you are navigating the very real stressors, even just the day-to-day stuff. Number 2 is compassion. Now, I talk about compassion all the time, but we need compassion more than ever. And that's going to include compassion for ourselves, self-compassion. It's going to include compassion for other people. Compassion is essential for us to not fall into cynicism. Now, that does not mean that we excuse or condone behavior. It doesn't. It means that we can appreciate that there's a human who may be suffering, including ourselves, who is having a difficult time in being able to navigate their feelings, in the choices that they're making, in trying to change their habits. Having compassion for ourselves is something that most physicians also seem to struggle with. And when we work on that, when we come together and we see that we're just human, and we are just human with an incredible degree of responsibility, doing incredibly hard work, we can start to lighten up the load on ourselves. So one of the major themes that came out when I was reviewing how the group was making progress is so many people identified letting go of guilt. I heard over and over again, I used to feel so guilty. I've always felt so guilty. I hate feeling guilty for really minor things, such as taking a day off when they're sick, right? Something that we wouldn't judge other people for, and yet we judge ourselves incredibly harshly when we do that. Feeling guilty that we didn't maybe answer someone's 40 questions that they had come into their 15-minute visit with. There are so many times that this come up, and as compassionate, as empathetic, as people who like to meet other people's expectations, right? That people pleasing element. When we can't or won't or don't do that, we are often left feeling like we are in the wrong. Like maybe our decision, our choice to set a boundary is wrong in some way, and we should feel guilty for it. I see that over and over and over again as a pattern, and it takes time to let go of the guilt. But as we cultivate more compassion for ourselves, we work on letting go of guilt and recognizing that this is just a pattern that we've fallen into and not a reflection that what we are doing is wrong. Number 3, safety. Psst. Hey friends, Megan here, interrupting myself with an important message for you. This system, this broken healthcare system that we work in, wasn't built for you. It rewards overwork, expects self-sacrifice, and leaves women physicians burned out and running on fumes. The reward for playing nice and working so hard? More work. But you don't have to play by those rules anymore. In fact, I have a special invitation just for you. Unbound is my signature group program for women physicians. It's your safe space to unravel the habits of perfectionism, people pleasing, and guilt so you can build a career and a life that actually work for you. The next round starts Sunday, March 2nd, and enrollment is open now. Head on over to my website, www.healthierforgood.com, or scroll down in the show notes to learn more. Safety is another issue in medicine that I don't think we talk about enough. Now, there are certainly important and devastating times when physical safety in particular is compromised in some way. And that's not really what I'm focusing on here, although obviously that is a huge issue and significantly important. But what I'm talking about more is psychological safety. And that includes the ability to be able to share your thoughts, your fears, to be able to speak and not feel worried that you are under threat somehow, that you are in some sort of a liability situation. Having the ability to come together and talk through thoughts and fears in a safe space with other humans who struggle with the same challenges is so critical. We had multiple times where people identified that they've been keeping these things to themselves. They have been keeping their fears and anxieties to themselves because they felt like they were broken. And hearing other people's stories, hearing how much other women physicians were also struggling with the same things, normalized what they were experiencing, and they felt safe to come forward, to ask questions, to be able to work through their complicated emotions. That safety is critical. We are often lacking that safety to be able to show up, to be able to learn something new, to be able to question what is going on. And having a safe community is so critical, and it will be even more so over the coming months. Number 4 is structure, which sounds very, very incredibly unsexy, right? We are smart, highly capable people. And yet, when we are working on making changes in our lives, we often lack supportive structure to be able to identify, okay, well, what is it I want to change and why? And how do I overcome these obstacles? And that's really where the magic of coaching comes in. Because when we are in a coaching environment, whether that's a one-on-one setting or in a group, we are able to identify what are the thoughts that are getting in the way? What are the emotions that come up? And how do I respond to those emotions in the moment? How can I start to work through these habits and patterns to be able to change what I do? We talk so much about boundaries in this group and being able to practice putting boundaries into place with repeatable structures. So, for example, being able to tell people to have words that we can use easily and practice over and over to be able to communicate boundaries and maintain boundaries. And knowing that both of those things are important and they're different, right? Being able to verbalize a boundary is one thing, being able to maintain it when someone is pushing back is a different challenge. And if you've ever tried to set better boundaries, you know what I'm talking about. Having structure, having weekly time that we come together, there's that particular structure, but there's also structured ways to work through our problems that are so helpful and have allowed my clients to really make amazing progress, even in the short time that we've been working together. When we know we need something to change, we often struggle to know, how am I going to change it? Right? We might turn to a book, we might hear a podcast, but it's not the same as actually pulling out pen and paper and really working our way through the challenge. That is one thing that we do, and it's so valuable. Number 5 is accountability. And accountability is a really interesting facet of, I don't know, the dynamics that we experience as physicians. We are highly, highly accountable people. We are highly accountable in our actions from a legal perspective, from an ethical perspective. There are very real consequences when we do or don't do something that we said we were going to do or not do. We are people who are driven to meet and satisfy the expectations and needs of other people. And yet, so many women physicians in particular struggle to be accountable to themselves or to those closest around them. So, an example I'll give, right, is let's say there's some after school event going on and you need to be home by 5:30, but work has worked on you, right? And there's people saying, oh, we need to add this patient, and oh, this person just walked in and they really need to be seen. And we struggle to set the boundaries and be accountable to ourselves in getting out the door at 5:30 like we said we would, and consequently also to the people around us. We may struggle to be accountable in terms of following through with our plans for exercise and taking care of ourselves, despite the fact that we know we want to. There are many places where this pops up. And again, it's one of the real strengths of physician coaching is that there is this external accountability that pops into place that helps people to more successfully meet their goals as they start to practice being more and more accountable to themselves. First, is the accountability to your coach, then to the group, and then to people that care about you, and so on and so on. It is so critical that we put these pieces into place and really start to build that skill of being accountable to ourselves, and especially in ourselves in what we want to accomplish that doesn't necessarily have any bearing on other people. If you've been wanting to work on improving your health or not staying up charting until midnight, 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. rather, that's something that primarily impacts you. Yes, it may impact your family ultimately, but primarily it impacts you, whether or not you're staying up super late at night charting. When we struggle with accountability to ourselves, it's very challenging to decide that you are going to finish the note in the room at the time of the visit because you're so used to just ignoring your future self and saying, oh, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, right? Having the structure in place, having the accountability where you have a group of people who are working on the same challenges, who are also saying, it's important to me to get this work done as soon as possible and to get home and to figure out what am I going to do with my evening, or to spend time with my kids, or to meet a friend, or to go to an exercise class. Working on that accountability is so helpful and powerful in people's lives. The last thing that I want to highlight is really the power of reflection. Now, if you've listened to that podcast before, you've heard me probably talk about this book, The Gap versus the Gain. And in that book, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, a PhD kind of doctor, not a medical doctor, and Coach Dan Sullivan talk about this idea that what we tend to look at is the gap between where we are and where we want to be. And because we are constantly moving the milepost of where we want to be, all we ever see is this gap. And it's pretty disempowering. However, if we choose to look at the gain, which is to see where we are now and how far we've come from where we started, there's power and momentum in that. And this ability to utilize your personal reflections to be able to understand, to be able to clarify your values so that you can do a better job of living in them rather than just professing them. There is so much wisdom to be gained and so much empowerment to be gained when you are able to do reflection. And it's something that people roll their eyes about. It's something that none of us typically wants to sit down and do. It, again, is one of those really unsexy things. But when we sit down and we reflect on who we are right now, how are we showing up? How am I living my life? How am I making progress? What has gone well? What have I been struggling with, right? When we are answering those questions and coming back to them over and over again, magic starts to happen. We can see that where we are may not be reflecting the values that we hold, right? We may think, oh, yes, living in a healthy way is really important to me. But if somebody watches what I'm doing, I'm not exercising, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, right? I am not living in my values. And that is a very disheartening, disempowering place to be. If we are going to meet the challenges of our work in general or the things that we are worried about over this next several months and years, we are going to need to be able to use the power of reflection to look and see how far we've come, to be very clear on what our values are, to be able to see where we can use those values best. The ability to sit and reflect, the power of doing that in community is so important. I wouldn't be where I am had I not joined a community years ago that pushed me to do more, to think more, to believe more, to be living in my values. And that's what we provide in Unbound. My friends, I want to make it very clear that we know what the challenges are and have been in healthcare. We know the common struggles that we have. This is episode 165. We've got 164 other episodes, and you can dive in and hear all about my thoughts. And you can pick up any of the other millions of podcasts, books, essays, articles, all sorts of evidence and research on the very real stresses that physicians face. And we are looking at an administration that is likely to be hostile to many of the things that we hold to be so important, like prevention through vaccines, for example, in equity, in reproductive health. There are so many potential areas that are going to be quite challenging. It is critical that we are able to take excellent care of ourselves so that we can show up to meet these challenges. This isn't about politics. This is about standing up for our values and what we believe to be right, standing up to what we believe to be in the best interest of the public and of our patients. I believe that we are going to be in a very real situation where that comes into play. And we are going to need to be able to take excellent care of ourselves so that we are ready, so that we are empowered, so that we are able to do this work, not only for the betterment of our personal lives and the people around us, which is compelling enough, but also for the sake of those that we hold so dear and the sacred calling that we share. If you are a woman physician and you are listening to my words and saying, this is exactly what I need, I want you to go now to my website, which is www.healthierforgood.com, and sign up for Unbound, Women Physicians Reclaiming Their Lives. This is your opportunity to come and be a part of a community of women physicians who are working on letting go of the habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, lack of boundaries as they contribute to burnout. It is so critical that we find ways to do our work well, without continuing to donate every ounce of energy, of passion, of care and empathy into other people and saving none for ourselves. We have to learn how to take care of ourselves because we can no longer pour from an empty cup. The world needs you right now. The world needs you to be able to take excellent care of yourself. So if you are looking for more of these 6 things that I highlighted, community, compassion, safety, structure, accountability, reflection, now is the time. I want you to send me a message, Megan, MEGAN, at healthierforgood.com if you have questions. My friends, it is so important that we learn to take care of ourselves. Until next week, take care. I'm sending a message of strength and resilience, not the kind of resilience that makes us hallmarky, sort of bounce back and I'm ready to go. I'm talking about the deeper kind of resilience where you feel like you matter as a human, you matter as a professional, you matter as a voice speaking up for what is right and good in this world. We need you, and we need you to fill your own cup. Until next week, take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.